Hello aspirants, a very good day to all of you. This is Vilasni from Veranda IAS. So friends, இன்னைக்கு நம்ம என்ன பார்க்க போறோம்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா the daily current affairs analysis for your 1st August 2025. So yes, before we start for today, of course there are few things we need to keep in mind. So today is a bright Friday morning, correct? Yes. So now in this context, because every day I tell you something motivating or something important for your preparation, in the context, if there is something that I want you all to keep in mind, right, for the upcoming days of your preparation, is definitely this SMART, SMART goals. Okay, so SMART goals na enna? So S stands for specific, M for measurable, A for attainable, R for relevant, and T for time based. Fine. So what is this SMART goal? So yes, preparation பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் all of you will have targets. All of you will have ideas as to how you want to prepare, right? How you want to take forward your preparation for the entire 1 year. Test series இருக்கட்டும், revision இருக்கட்டும், previous year questions practice பண்றதா இருக்கட்டும், எல்லாருக்குமே ஒரு clear cut idea இருக்கும் as to what you want to do with regard to your preparation. But in this context, one thing that I want you to remember is it is important to set goals. It is important to set targets. But in the goals, வந்து வேகா இருக்கு. And if it is not smart, then it is pointless. Because at the end of the day, all of us can keep making plans. But it comes down to execution and effective implementation. If that is going to miss, then trust me, you're not making the best out of it. So in the context of வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, talking about a smart goal, what I wanted to say is, number one, நீங்க என்னெல்லாம் டெய்லி கோல்ஸ் ப்ரிப்பேர் பண்றீங்களோ இல்ல வீக்லி கோல்ஸா கூட இருக்கட்டும், let it be time bound, let it be achievable, let it be relevant. That is more important. So keep this in mind. So in the context of பொறுத்த வரைக்கும், if there are few things that I want you all to remember, number one, let your goal be specific. When I talk about specific, right, I want your goals to have a specific inclination on it. Okay, so for example, in the context of பார்க்கும்போது, you should set realistic set goals. For example, it could be today you want to complete a particular area in polity or maybe a particular area in economy, right? So set goals irkano. And when we talk about measurable, right, it has to be based on certain set criteria. For example, maybe today you have a plan of completing polity fundamental rights and maybe say DPSP. So yes, if this for this together, if you have kept the limit as say 100%, try to make sure you complete both, right? And next, idla irukra PYQs, idla irukra practice questions, make sure you're doing justice for all of that as well. Attainable. So this is very, very important because number one, many of us try to make unrealistic goals, right? We have very high expectation on ourselves. So now remember this, if at all நீங்க எடுக்கிற goals நீங்க set பண்ற targets are not going to be time bound, or if at all they don't have a set limit, what will happen is you will keep getting disappointed. Okay, because at the end of the day, say for example, if you're making இன்னைக்கு வந்து polity I'll be reading 120 pages, right? Economy I'll be doing something. These are unrealistic goals. You yourself very well know that you will not be able to achieve it. So in case you don't achieve it, what will happen? Sense of disappointment இருக்கும், guilt இருக்கும், right? And this will start overpowering and you will not feel good about yourself. And that is dangerous. Okay, because in this exam, like I said, it's a marathon race. So keeping yourself motivated and staying consistent also really matters. So in that case, please remember, have achievable goals. And next is relevant. So when I say relevant, it has to be that your goals need to be clearly defined. And நீங்க பண்ண போற long term, for your long term ambition, your goals need to be very relevant so that you can achieve them. So that also really matters, right? So say for example, if you have a target that, okay, for my next 2026 prelims, by December, I want to complete my optional. So this is a relevant goal. So this also you have to keep in mind. Next is time based, right? So whatever goals you have need to be time based. It shouldn't be that you're wasting too much time, right? So set time vechukano. So say for example, you're making a plan. Today you're going to complete these 2 chapters in polity. The time allocated for it is 2.5 hours. So like this, you need to have very clear, concise, well-defined goals such that number one, you are clear. Number two, you are able to execute. So yes, when there is a plan, when there is a strategy, right, it will work out well. So I think all of you know, even when countries go for war, right, there is a plan. and then they strategize and they execute. So here, if at all you're not going to have a well plan, right? If you don't have a proper structured plan, then it's as good as losing it. So in that context, please remember, ஒரு proper plan தேவை, and it is your duty to stick to it and also execute what it takes. Okay, so with this, let us straight away get into the discussion for today. Okay, so guys, important topics from today's newspaper, the Hindu International Edition வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, India a tight spot says government amongst Trump tirade. Okay, next, so actually India bright spot says government amongst Trump tirade. Structural cracks emerging in India-US strategic partnerships. Malaria's new front lines, vaccines, innovation, and the Indian endgame. Over 4 lakh take part in Amarnath Yatra. And also there is one nice article about MS Swaminathan. Okay, talking about where these overlap, the first two topics வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, they are more or less correlated. So we will discuss them together. And this will be important from your GS paper to international relations. And here with regard to malaria, right, in the topic of பொறுத்தவரைக்கும், what is malaria, why is malaria occurring, what efforts need to be taken, right? So in this context, what have been some developments, malaria kaga create panna sila vaccines, right? So all this வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, we will try understanding, and this will feature as an important topic from your GS paper 3 science and tech. And next, over 4 lakh take part in Amarnath Yatra. So yes, many times questions, especially art and culture lende pathingana, from your GS paper 1 art and culture. Yes, also in prelims, certain questions do come. So Amarnath Yatra, few things about it, and also other festivals and major events, that alone we will discuss from the prelims point of view. So yes, this features as an important topic in your GS paper 1 art and culture. Next, Modi to inaugurate science conference for MS Swaminathan's birth centenary. So in the context there, from a prelims point of view, there are some important key terms that we have to discuss. For example, there is a term called biohappiness which has been quoted. So what does this term mean? So in the madriyana context, sir, we will try understanding one by one. Yes, so I hope this part is clear to all of you. Fine. Okay, so now let's straight away get into the discussion. Okay, so guys, moving forward, topic number 1. India a bright spot, right, says government, especially with regard to the Trump tirade. So now in this context, bright spot, yes, India and US ties, the strain happening in India and US ties, what are the implications? So நேத்து கூட பார்த்தோம், with regard to Trump imposing tariffs on Indian goods, that is Indian imports into the US, right? So over here, the tariffs that Trump has stated is 25% tariffs, right? So why is this happening? So basically வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, way back earlier, right, Trump had made a statement. For those countries where US has an unfair advantage with regard to trade, Trump said that he would impose tariffs as high as 26%, okay, retaliatory tariffs, basically as high as 26%. But now in the context of India, அவர் என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காருன்னா, starting from today, that is August 1, 2025, right, the tariffs on Indian imports to the US will be 25%. Okay, so in this context, why are these tariffs being imposed now? And yes, one more thing to remember is it's not just about tariffs, but there also be a penalty, right? So yeah, abdin pathingana, yesterday's article also we discussed the primary reasons for this were because number 1, US is not happy with India becoming close to Russia, especially with Russia-Ukraine war taking place. India வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, from Russia we are trying to import crude oil. At the same time, we are also trying to get defense systems, right, from Russia. For example, the S-400 Triumph air defense system. Okay, so this does not make US very happy. And in this context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, a statement has been made by President Trump. அவர் என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காருன்னா, India and Russia could take their dead economies together, right? So this is a very bold and a very massive statement to be made by the president of the US, right? So in this context, we need to understand why was this statement made, what are the implications, how is India going to brace for this particular tariffs which are being put. So in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா few more things were also cited, right? So let's try understanding all of this one by one. Okay, so overall in the article என்ன சொல்லிருக்காங்க? Number one, what is Trump's feeling on imposing these tariffs? Why is he doing it? Okay, next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா what was the response of our Commerce and Industries Minister Piyush Goyal, right? What was his statement with regard to these tariffs which were being put? How is India going to prepare itself, right? So this article also talks about this. And yes, more than that, it also says that Trump is not happy, number one, with India getting defense and crude imports from Russia. At the same time, அவர் எதுவும் சொல்லியிருக்காரு that many certain Indian companies are also trying to procure oil from Iran. And that is also making him a bit upset. Fine. And also the degree of closeness of India to Russia is also becoming a point of contention with regard to this particular issue. Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா he's also said, right, the statement that he has made is with regard to India, US has not had a very favorable trade advantage because நீங்க 2024 ஓட values கூட பாத்தீங்கன்னா with regard to the trade between India and US, India was in surplus. Okay, so that has also made America unhappy. And next one, the Pathingana, he's also said that going forward, right? He's also said that with regard to India, they have not been able to do much trade. And with regard to Russia, the scope for trade has been very less. So now in this context, our enna solrarana, he wants to start engaging with Pakistan, especially for the development of oil reserves, right? So this is something which India has to watch out for. Right? So in this context, yes, Pakistan பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் பாத்தீங்கன்னா what is happening is Pakistan itself is dependent on the Middle East for oil. Okay, but in this context, Pakistan has many offshore oil reserves. இது எல்லாமே பாத்தீங்கன்னா has been unexplored. Right? So now if US is going to enter, technology transfer நடக்கும், many companies can come in, oil exploration can be promoted better. Right? So இதுக்கான scope and advantage is also there. And Trump has also remarked that if this goes through well, at one point of time, even India could get oil out of Pakistan, right? So this was the implication and the discussion which took place so far. So idhila irukra important ana highlights understand panna try pannalam. Okay, so number one, this was the article of yesterday. In the article, a few things for you to remember is, I want you all to keep in mind the 5 major exports of India to the US. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Electrical machinery, pharmaceutical products, nuclear machinery, pearls and precious stone, mineral fuels, right? The top 5 exports of India to the US. Remember this. Okay, next, let's talk about the context of this particular article. Like I said, it's the same. US plans on imposing 25% tariffs on Indian imports starting from August 1, right? Main reasons enna? Number one, procurement of Russian military equipment, high tariffs and non-monetary trade barriers, right? And also a penalty will be there. Okay, so இது எல்லாமே cite பண்ணிருக்காங்க. Next, in this context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, we also need to understand why this is happening. So trade ties பாத்தீங்கன்னா, as of 2024, right? India-US trade reached the value of $186 billion. And இங்க வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, it was surplus on the side of India, somewhere around $41 billion. Okay, so why is this happening? Why is Trump feeling wanting to impose these tariffs? Abdin pathina, number one, Trump is an American nationalist. He believes in America first policy, right? And our yellang campaigns pathina, he keeps reinstating this. Make America great again. Make America great again. So he sticks on to this. And in this context, yes, Trump was earlier a businessman as well. So here he feels many countries, right? They are having an unfair advantage with regard to the trade with US. US is having an unfair advantage with regard to them. So in the context of the Trump feels the need to put forward retaliatory tariffs. So yes, so number one, specifically India பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் பாத்தீங்கன்னா, main reasons, India's closeness with Russia. Next one வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, India is actively engaging in BRICS, where Russia is also present, right? And countries that US is not very happy with, like Russia and China, are also there in it. Yes, and also many non-monetary trade barriers, higher tariffs. இது எல்லாமே is creating an unfair advantage for the US. Yes, and the main primary reason is, although yes, because the Russia-Ukraine war is going, and the war நடந்தாலுமே India வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, we are trying to import crude oil as well as military equipment from Russia. So all these are some of the major reasons. So in the context of வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா what has been India's response to it? So yes, இங்க வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா our minister, right, Piyush Goyal, இவர் என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காருன்னா, India is seen globally as a bright spot, right? We are expanding, right? We are coming up with many reforms, economic reforms ஆ இருக்கட்டும். And yes, உங்க எல்லாருக்குமே தெரியும், India plans to become the third largest economy in the world very soon, and we have a vision of Vikshit Bharat. இதை வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா we want to achieve by 2047. ஸோ இந்த கான்டெக்ட்ல ஏகப்பட்ட ஃபாஸ்ட் பேஸ்ட் மெஷர்ஸ், ரிஃபார்ம்ஸ், நிறைய விஷயங்கள் நடந்துட்டு இருக்கு. ஸோ எஸ், நவ் தட் தீஸ் tariffs are being put, the Commerce Ministry as well as the Indian government is trying to understand how do we navigate this, how do we take this forward in a better way. So இங்க வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா the interest of those involved, especially in agriculture, MSMEs, right, workers, entrepreneurs, that really matters. And yes, India also feels that சில countries மட்டும் imports related dependent இருக்காம, let us diversify our trade, right? Let us look for new options and avenue. This was also being cited. Okay, so overall this was the primary demand of this article. Fine. So now in the context of வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, let us also understand few more things. Okay, so yes, so number one, US has said that it will engage in strategic ties with Pakistan, especially for production of oil. So yeah, why does US want to do this? Right? So any guesses, any idea why US is trying to do this? So now see, try to understand one thing. Okay, so now over here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, India is becoming very dominant in South Asia. We're trying to improve our position over here. Okay, and in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, China is also expanding in terms of its Belt Road Initiative and many other things that it is doing. And here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, especially right, after changing India's stance, India's closeness towards Russia and many other factors is also triggering the US. And US பாத்தீங்கன்னா, it is very dependent on the Middle East, especially for oil reserves. So in the context, if US companies are going to enter into Pakistan, right, technology transfer can take place, right, and இங்க இந்த oil exploration பண்ணா, it could be a win-win situation. Right? So these are some reasons why US is vested and US is interested. Okay, so this is the overall crux. So read about this, try to understand the background, right? இது ரிலேட்டடா இருக்கிற சில PYQs போய் சால்வ் பண்ணுங்க and keep following the updates. Fine. So next, moving forward, let us also understand few more things. So next article வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, it is also an article from your GS paper 2. இந்த ஆர்டிக்கலுமே talk specifically about changing dynamics of India's US strategic relationship. Okay, so in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, the author over here has tried to explain why is that in recent days India and US oda relationship has got strained. What have been the reasons for it? Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, what they have also cited over here is what are some major problems that US feels, right? US வந்து என்னென்ன problems இதுல இருக்குன்னு நினைக்குது. So in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, they have cited, right, with regard to especially after Operation Sindoor, right? So Trump was a little bit taken aback because he felt there was a terrorist infiltration. Yes, that is agreed. But now India willing to retaliate, right, offensive, might have also made US a little bit skeptical. This is also one. And here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, other things have also been cited. For example, India's engaging closeness with Russia, India trying to engage with other countries which US is not in a good relationship with, India's position in BRICS, right? So all this has been cited over here. So in the article வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, it tries to compare two things. Fine. One is American nationalism versus Indian nationalism, right? America's make America great again versus India's new normal. So in the ரெண்டுத்தோட equation, how will it be balanced? Right? Where is the leaning more towards? So this is what this article has beautifully spoken about. And in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, yes, India வந்து பொறுத்த வரைக்கும், even our external affairs ministry has cited this. We want to be, or we want to promote sabka saath sabka vikas. Fine. At the same time, நிறைய countries இருக்கட்டும், just like how US has a relationship with many countries, India has also leveraged its relationship with many countries. For example, பாருங்க, we can be a part of BRICS also, right? And we can also engage with US. Fine. We can talk to Israel also. At the same time, we can also interact with countries like Iran. Fine. At the same time, we can deal with Russia also. We can deal with Ukraine also. Yes. So in the mari diverse strategic relationships, we have been trying to promote. So all this has been effectively analyzed in this article. So let us try understanding them one by one. Okay. So in the context of பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் number one வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா earlier, right, the relationship between India and US, right, was primarily more of a strategic alignment. Fine. There was a well-defined relationship. But now, inga vandu pathingana, this is more or less shifting. In today's world, right, India wants autonomy. Fine. India wants to rely on those partners seeking at its interest. So, India oda interest which we are navigating in a multipolar world. Fine. So, in the context of பொறுத்த வரைக்கும், we are engaging in different partnerships. For example, India is a part of Quad. So, Quad வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, it has US, India, Australia, Japan. We are also a part of BRICS. Fine. And இதே மாதிரி பாத்தீங்கன்னா, we are engaging with other countries as well. So, this is not liked by US. But at the same time, US can engage in relationships with other country. But US has a problem with India is going to engage with other countries. So, this has been a difference of opinion. Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, with regard to Operation Sindoor also, India willing to use nukes. That was also not very welcomed by US. And அடுத்து வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, especially with regard to trade, right, US feels it has an unfair advantage. So in the context of பாத்தீங்கன்னா, US வந்து சொல்லியிருக்காங்க that yes, trade surplus இல்ல with regard to India, right, and that is also making US a little bit upset. So all these have been cited. And here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, especially why, one more thing you need to understand why US is trying to, like, enter into Pakistan and also ensure that it will also, like, be a part of exploring oil reserves. Majorly is also could be because of this. யோசிச்சு பாருங்க, in the context we have India, right, here we have Pakistan, and somewhere here we have Afghanistan. Russia is trying to engage with Afghanistan, right, and all of you know US left out of Afghanistan and fled away, right? So in this case, Russia in these days is trying to engage close with Afghanistan. This is being closely monitored by US. So in the context of யோசிச்சு பாருங்க, if Russia is trying to engage with Afghanistan, Russian interest என்னவா இருக்கும்? To make sure that its goods, right, can through Afghanistan reach different parts of South Asia. So that will be their interest. But in this context, it could also mean that here there is a vacuum, and in the vacuum, Russia is trying to fill. So in this case, if US can engage more with Pakistan, right, over here, it is like keeping a checkmate. Yes or no? Think about it. Yes, and in this context, right? So one, they also feel that number one, energy security ties are வந்து further பண்ணணும், right? Oils or dependence, even for US, its import dependence on oil should come down. That could also be an intent. And second, it could also be a way to send a clear message to India. That is also highly possible. And one more main thing could be to counter China. So உங்க எல்லாருக்குமே தெரியும், China has something called as the Belt Road Initiative, right? So yes, China is also expanding. So இந்த இடத்துல Chinaவை curtail பண்றதுக்கு கூட somewhere US can leverage its ties with Pakistan. So overall, this is the outcome of this discussion. Okay, so go through this and try to understand what is the relationship, what is the changing dynamics, வேற countries ஓட dynamics எப்படி மாறிட்டு இருக்கு, இது எல்லாமே புரிஞ்சுக்க ட்ரை பண்ணுங்க. Okay, so now with regard to this, let us look at a previous year question. So yes, in the question வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, it was asked in 2019. Okay, and the question is, what introduces friction into the ties between the India and the US? Is that Washington is still unable to find for India a position in its global strategy which would satisfy India's national self-esteem and ambitions. Explain with suitable examples. Okay, so let me tell you one thing, guys. In questions like this, fine, sometimes instead of directly saying explain with examples, சில வாட்டி பாத்தீங்கன்னா examல வந்து there'll also be a term, and that term is called as illustrate. So sometimes explain with examples சொல்றதுக்கு பதில் they can also use the word illustrate. The word illustrate also means நீங்க question வந்து examples ஓட justify பண்ணணும். So இந்த மாதிரியான terms, I request you all to go back and read. Discuss na என்ன, analyze na என்ன, critically analyze na என்ன, evaluate na என்ன, ஒரு decent amount of clarity இருக்கணும். For example, if the topic says analyze, right, you need to analyze the topic holistically, statistics quote பண்ணலாம், talk about advantages and disadvantages. But இதே contextல if it says critically analyze na more negatives and less positives. Remember this. For example, ஒரு question ஓட endல critically analyze னு ஒரு word இருந்துச்சுன்னா 70% negative, 30% positive. More negatives quote பண்ணணும், positives கம்மி பண்ணணும். இதோட மீனிங் தெரியாம நீங்க ஈக்குவல் அமௌண்ட் ஆஃப் பாசிட்டிவ்ஸ் அண்ட் நெகட்டிவ்ஸ் எழுதுனீங்கன்னா it will backfire. Remember that. Okay, so in this context, try solving this question. This is a UPSC previous year question. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா let us enter into more topics. So yes, malaria பத்தி ஒரு article இருந்துச்சு. So primarily what this topic talks about is first with regard to malaria. Yes, 2030 ஒரு target இருக்கு, right? And malaria oda cases, how is it increasing, right? Malaria ku ipo varaikkum nama develop panna vaccines, more innovation is required, especially in India, right? How is malaria going unnoticed? Fine. So இது எல்லாமே இந்த ஆர்டிக்கல்ல டிஸ்கஸ் பண்ணியிருக்காங்க. சில ஸ்டாட்டிஸ்டிக்ஸை கொடுத்துருக்காங்க, developments in the vaccines so far, right? And also what are the major challenges which are there with regard to this. So in the context, let us understand few things. So first, what is malaria, right? நம்ம எல்லாருக்குமே தெரியும் malaria வந்து is primarily like it spreads through the bite of a female anopheles mosquito, right? An infected female anopheles mosquito. So here the infection, right, the on the mosquito part is caused by a parasite. இந்த parasiteக்கு பேர் வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா plasmodium. So இந்த plasmodium parasite பாத்தீங்கன்னா there are 5 different types. இதுல வந்து plasmodium falciparum and plasmodium vivax are quite dangerous. Fine. So now look at this image. In the image pathina, you will be able to understand the life cycle of a malaria parasite. Okay. So now, for example, say there is a mosquito. Okay. So here pathina, the mosquito is the vector, right? So the mosquito oda body la vandu plasmodium parasite is there. Now this mosquito is going to bite a healthy person. Okay. So now when this mosquito basically tries to suck blood, right, from this person, what will happen is the plasmodium will enter into this person's body. In the plasmodium inga pogun pathina, it will attack the liver. In the liver this will multiply, and then what will happen is it will enter into the bloodstream kulla ponadukku appo it will start attacking the RBCs, the red blood cells. Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, if there is another mosquito, a normal healthy mosquito, இது வந்து by mistake if it comes and bites an infected person, right, the plasmodium will enter into the mosquito's body. And next இதே mosquito இன்னொரு person கடிக்கும் போது again it will be transferred. So இந்த வேலை தான் வந்து malaria keeps happening. Okay, so this is the life cycle of a malaria parasite. So try to read about this. இது எல்லாமே basics. So malaria, the variety of mosquito that causes it, right? Plasmodium parasite, adla two major ones are plasmodium falciparum and plasmodium vivax. Read about it. And also with regard to the life cycle of malaria, ஒரு generic idea வச்சுக்க try பண்ணுங்க. Okay, so in the context வந்து இந்த ஆர்டிக்கல்ல என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்கன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா, number 1, 2023ல மட்டும் நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா malaria infected over 249 million people. Okay, and yes, it has also killed many people. And with regard to India, yes, we are trying to reduce our malaria burden. Okay, but many cases still continue to exist, especially when the pathingana in tribal districts of states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha la pathingana malaria cases are continuously it's still there, right? And we are taking efforts to reduce them. Okay, so in the context of India la kuda majorly the two major types, plasmodium falciparum and plasmodium vivax, is being the biggest problem. So in the context of pathingana, what have been some measures which have been taken, right? So here what they have said is vaccine development பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் first we had something called RTS. So in the RTS தான் வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா it was one of the first approved malaria vaccine. But here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா the efficacy of RTS was somewhere around 55%. Okay, and it was not very long lived, and இதுக்கு ஒரு booster dose தேவைப்பட்டுச்சு. Next one வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா we came up with RT1 matrix M. So this was developed by Serum Institute of India along with Oxford Research. So inga vandu pathina this efficacy was much more better. So earlier it was 55%, but in this one it was up to 77%. Next, nariya vaccines vanduchu. We had an mRNA vaccine, and then yes, in the article they have also mentioned about a term called as novel antibody therapies. monoclonal antibodies. So இந்த monoclonal antibody வந்து என்ன பண்ணும் majorly பாத்தீங்கன்னா it will block the parasite's entry into the RBC, right? So in that way it could also be a method of providing passive immunity, especially when these vaccines fail. So in the context you need to understand, exam la கேட்கலாம் RTS, right? Mosquirix was seen in the context of which disease, and they'll give you few options, and here you should know it is to do with malaria. Okay, so இந்த மாதிரியான questions வரலாம். I will also show you some at the end of this particular topic. So next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா talking about the major challenges, especially with regard to India. So first, many people don't know that they actually have malaria until the symptoms come out, right? So symptoms வந்து என்ன, primarily வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா shivering இருக்கும், like many chills will be there in the body, right? So all this is possible. Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா many tribal populations who are getting affected, இவங்களுக்கு தெரியல that they are affected by malaria. So here screening is not very effective, and because tribal people are more or less geographically isolated, reaching out to them is also becoming a problem. And next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா more research and development is required, right? More vaccines need to come, the efficacy of the vaccines நம்ம improve பண்ணணும், right? And on this side, usually வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா to curtail the spread of mosquitoes, DDT, many pesticides are being used. But yes, mosquitoes have also evolved, right? And நீங்க harmful pesticides like DDT எல்லாம் யூஸ் பண்ணும்போது the scope for biomagnification improves. Have you heard of this term called biomagnification, right? What do you mean by the word biomagnification? Any guesses? Okay, so biomagnification வந்து என்னன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா increase in the concentration of a toxicant at successive trophic levels, right? So in this case, any toxicant, especially like DDT, water bodies are used பண்ணும்போது food chains கூட it can amplify, and the higher predator, which is usually humans, we tend to be more or less affected, right? So in the context வந்து people are suggesting shift to biopesticides. For example, wherever இந்த mosquito larvae இருக்கிற இடத்துல வந்து நிறைய பேர் என்ன சஜஸ்ட் பண்றாங்கன்னா introduce Gambusia fish. So Gambusia fish is an example of a biopesticide, right? So in the context வந்து scope for biomagnification or other chemical related issues can be reduced. And in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா they have also said that more diagnostic tests are required, and majorly research and development வந்து further பண்ணணும் with regard to coming up with more efficient and effective vaccination. Okay, so guys, with regard to this, you just need to understand malaria target என்ன, India's initiatives for malaria என்னெல்லாம் எடுத்திருக்கோம், World Health Organization ஏதாவது initiatives எடுத்திருக்காங்களா with regard to malaria, இது பத்தி போய் படிங்க. And yes, in this context, what should we do அப்படின்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா, yes, நிறைய மக்கள் மத்தியில வந்து vaccination hesitancy ஒன்னு இருக்கு. People are scared to put vaccines. They think vaccinations use பண்ணா many unwanted effects on the body can be there, many unwanted ramifications can be there, so people are hesitant. This mindset needs to change. So here NGOs can play a role, civil society can play a role, right? Corporates through their CSR initiatives can pitch in. All this can be done. Next, better policies are required, right? At the same time, screening of population. So regional wise disparities, especially inga vandu pathina tribal districts within the states of Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, they are majorly affected. So take more efforts in these places to screen the population more effectively and ensure that this spread of malaria is curtailed. All this can be done. Okay. So next, in this context, look at a previous year question in the 2023 prelims la ketirundanga. Wolbachia method is sometimes talked about with reference to which of the following? So here, number 1, controlling the viral diseases spread by mosquitoes. Okay, converting crop residues into packing material, producing biodegradable plastic, producing biochar from thermochemical conversions of biomass. So here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா the answer is A. It was used as a method to control the spread of mosquitoes. So read about Wolbachia method. Also, few other previous year questions. So in one of the years வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, which of the following can be used as a which of the following can be used as a mosquito repellent அப்படின்னு ஒரு question கேட்டிருந்தாங்க, and the answer was lemongrass. Okay, so read about this as well. So lemongrass is usually used as a mosquito repellent. So mosquitoes பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் Wolbachia method பத்தி படிங்க. Lemongrass is a mosquito repellent, right? And also I gave you an example of using biopesticides like Gambusia fish. So read about all of this. Okay, so now in this context, let's move forward to the next topic. Okay, so over 4 lakh take part in Amarnath Yatra. Okay, so yes, in the Amarnath Yatra, it takes place in Jammu and Kashmir. So இந்த இடத்துல வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, especially after the Pahalgam attacks, 4 lakh people are set to take part over here. Okay, so usually in the Amarnath Yatra, it takes place during this month, right? It usually takes place in this month. Jammu and Kashmir la usually நடக்கும். And yes, the major reason why this topic was in news is Pahalgam Kapro, people might have thought that okay, the numbers might come down, but yes, it still continues, continues the way it was. So in this context, வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, yes, it's basically a Hindu pilgrimage to the Amarnath cave shrine, which is located in Jammu and Kashmir. And here, the central deity is basically Lord Shiva. So, inga vandu pathina, there is a Shiva lingam which is in the ice form, okay, which is kept over here. The time period where this usually happens is between July to August. Okay, so here vandu pathina, why this place is very significant from a religious point of view. Yes, so it is believed that in the place the Lord Shiva told his wife Parvati the secret to immortality. Okay, so this is one thing. But here talking about Amarnath Yatra from the UPSC perspective, what you need to understand is in the edathla vandu pathina, yes, this route is not free from terrorist attacks. So yes, strong vigilance, strong security, the ellame theva. Next, in the location vandu pathina, it is prone to frequent hazards, landslides, right, avalanches, many such events are also possible. So all this has also been discussed with regard to this. So in the context, let's just have a rough idea of Amarnath Yatra. Where does it take place? That's it. And few more things that I wanted to share. So in the context, look at this image. So this is called as Kheer Bhavani Mela. Okay, so in the context of Kheer Bhavani Mela, it is also a temple, Kheer Bhavani temple, idum Kashmir la irukku. The goddess over here is goddess Ragnya Devi. So goddess Ragnya Devi ki this temple has been dedicated. Okay, so one very unique feature about this temple is that here if you see there is a very good sign of Hindu-Muslim unity. Because நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா இங்க visit பண்றவங்க ஆதி Kashmiri Hindu pandits, but outside the temple the people selling the flowers, diyas இருக்கட்டும், incense sticks இருக்கட்டும், it is usually Muslims. Okay, so here one more very interesting feature about this place is that look at the color of the water. Crystal clear irukku, correct? So there is a belief. The belief வந்து என்னன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா, if at all something dangerous is going to happen to the world, for example a massive event is going to get unleashed, right, a natural calamity, right, appo வந்து the color of this water will change. Okay, so that is a belief. Next, this one is called as Char Dham Yatra. So Char refers to 4 and Dham refers to 4 major pilgrimage sites. எல்லா சைட்ஸுமே உத்தராகண்ட்ல இருக்கு. So Char Dham Yatra in Uttarakhand covers places like Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath and Badrinath. Okay, so in the context other places and other sites, you should have a very clear cut idea. Okay, so with regard to this particular topic is done. The takeaways are simple, so idha mattu go through பண்ணிக்கோங்க, more than enough. So next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, let's look at the other topic. So yes, Modi to inaugurate science conference to mark MS Swaminathan's birth centenary. Okay, so MS Swaminathan or contributions, right, they could be important from the point of GS paper 3 science and tech. So please read about it. And in the context, if there is something, right, so here more than all of this, there is a mention of a particular book, right? So here it is said that Prime Minister would release a reprint of In Search of Biohappiness. Okay, so this is a book. So sometimes exam la ippala vandu pathina, they are giving names of books and they are asking who had written it. So In Search of Biohappiness was written by who abdin keta. In the options you should know it is by MS Swaminathan. Okay, so now over here with regard to this, the author, this particular article, they have also explained biohappiness na enna. Okay, so here biohappiness basically means how sustainable use of biodiversity can have an implication on food security. Okay, so in the context of overall the summation over here is that scientific technological development can take place, but ecological wisdom also has to be balanced. Okay, so in the context read about MS Swaminathan, read about MS Swaminathan's contributions, right? So all that is very important. Biohappiness அப்படினா the term oda meaning வந்து என்ன, what could be its implications? So basically how sustainable use of biodiversity can have an improved impact on quality of life, on food security, on restoring biodiversity, etc. Okay, so இந்த மாதிரி terminologies can be important from the point of view of the exam. Also நீங்க வந்து உங்க ஆன்சர்ஸோட கன்க்ளூஷன் எழுதும் போது கூட you can quote such terms like biohappiness, etc. Okay, so with regard to this is pretty much it. So yes, so guys, with this இன்னைக்கு இருக்கிற major topics வந்து நம்ம cover பண்ணிட்டோம். We have also taken a look at some previous year questions, right? So go through them. Also some mains questions are displayed in these slides. Please go through. Okay, so these become important. So next, what will we do? We will enter into the editorial analysis for today. So yes, editorial analysis dated 1st August 2025. The editorial of the day is an environment topic. என்ன டாபிக்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா why the world needs better green technologies. Why the world needs better green technologies. So இதுதான் வந்து scope of discussion. Okay, so in the context like I always say, to analyze every editorial something is very important. அது என்னன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா there is an acronym called as CODE, right? So here C stands for context or core issue, O stands for opinion, D stands for data, and E stands for editorial takeaways. So in the editorial takeaways can further be divided into ICES. I meaning issues, okay? C meaning causes, E meaning effects, and S meaning suggestions or solutions. Okay, so here this becomes important. So now in this context வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா majorly for your UPSC point of view, கோட்லேருந்து நம்ம derive பண்ற ICS தான் important because நீங்க ஏகப்பட்ட questions பாருங்க, more or less questions வந்து will revolve around factors, causes, effects and suggestions. So in the context வந்து you should have a very clear cut idea, right, of what the factors or causes are, what the issues are, what the effects are, right, what could be the initiatives, suggestions, way forward, etc. So yes, like I always say, எல்லா editorialக்கு இந்த model called as code, right? ஒரு force fit model நம்மளால implement பண்ண முடியாது, but majorly it fits. Okay, so yes, going into the discussion, so in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா the author has elaborated. So first author மெயினா என்ன சொல்றாங்க, the entire world is talking about green growth, pushing towards sustainable development, addressing climate change. So in the context வந்து solar energy is viewed as a viable potential solution. So solar energy பார்த்த வரைக்கும் we are all shifting towards solar photovoltaics, right? So the solar panels, right? So நீங்க பார்த்தீங்கன்னா rooftops-லையும் சரி, urban centers-ல many places-ல வந்து this can be installed, right? And it has its own multiple advantages. So in the context வந்து they have elaborated about decarbonization, shifting towards PVs, right? That has been spoken about. PVs இருக்கிற certain significant features as well as PVs with regard to India இருக்கிற certain limitations. What are some challenges that we are speaking? And next in the article என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காங்கன்னா they've spoken about the greenness of green hydrogen. Okay, so here வந்து what we are trying to say is, even if you take the context of India, we have a national hydrogen mission. We are talking about green growth, right? And here we are shifting towards a hydrogen economy. So inga வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா they have discussed about what the word green hydrogen means. Green hydrogen is nothing but splitting of water, electrolysis or splitting of water லந்து produce பண்ற hydrogen. So here what they are saying is, for example, through using these PV panels, we are like, trying to harness solar energy. Now this energy can be utilized for splitting of water to produce hydrogen. Now this hydrogen can be transported and used in multiple sectors. But is this process efficient? இது வந்து ஒரு question mark-ஆ இருக்கு, right? So this is what the author has elaborated about. And here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா certain way forward, suitable measures which can be taken, what should be the ideal way forward has also been discussed. Okay, so with this let us understand. So yes, context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா across the world, renewable energy or dependence is increasing. Many countries are pushing towards renewable energy because yes, climate change targets இருக்கு. Countries have to fulfill their commitments, right? NDCs are there. So in the context of yes, many countries feel the need to shift towards renewables because they have to fulfill their obligations to various conventions, right? So in the context of பாத்தீங்கன்னா photovoltaics, which is solar panels. இதுதான் வந்து many countries are willing to adopt, right? Especially tropical regions இருக்கிற countries, right? They are willing to adopt more for solar panels because here there is greater insolation, greater sunlight, and it can be harnessed effectively. But here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா solar energy adoption alone will not be sufficient for us to meet our climate goals, right? More smarter innovations, more research and development is the way forward. So in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா this article has even spoken about solar photovoltaics or your solar panels இருக்கிற drawbacks என்ன. First major drawback வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா இந்த PV நம்ம பண்றதுக்கு தேவைப்படுற materials, right? It is very difficult to produce. Next one வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா there is high import dependence on China, right? So when India is talking about Atmanirbhar, when India is talking about becoming self-reliant, in the context, depending on China for raw materials doesn't make sense, right? And that is also one more problem. And next, என்ன சொல்றாங்க? In the solar power, if we harness it also, we're using this energy to produce green hydrogen, right? So in this process, large quantities of the energy which is harnessed is also getting used. So significant losses are there. So is this really viable? That is the question. So next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா they have also cited other things. For example, they've spoken about the greenness of green hydrogen. இதை வந்து நம்ம உண்மையிலே check பண்ணணும். Is it actually green? Right? So that is what they have spoken. So now they are saying, yes, while many people say green hydrogen could be a clean fuel, why? Because green hydrogen is produced through the splitting of water. Here the scope for carbon dioxide emissions வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா is very less. But in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா they've also spoken about many other things. For example, solar panels produce பண்றதுக்கு, right, large amount of energy. See, for example, நம்ம solar panels which we are producing, say, solar energy, right? Now this energy வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா large quantities of it is required, right, is required for electrolysis. So now when that is also done, right, this is more or less very energy intensive. So next வந்து என்ன சொல்றாங்க? Electrolysis itself is energy inefficient. So in the context, yes, using it for hydrogen, using it for producing green hydrogen means நிறைய amount of the energy which is being harnessed is not getting effectively used. Next, அவங்க இதையும் cite பண்றாங்க that also with regard to transporting green hydrogen, produce பண்ற energy is also getting lost. So here, overall, what is there in the end வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா is less and not significantly very major. Okay, so now here one of the major conclusions of this particular article is that green hydrogen is not automatically clean, right? So here it depends on number one, the source, and number two, the efficiency of the electricity used. So here, yes, நிறைய research and development தேவை, right? So more technological developments are needed. இது எல்லாம் இருந்தா மட்டும்தான் it is possible to make this entire process much more sustainable, right? So guys, with this, we have overall tried discussing the major topics for the day. Editorial analysis ரொம்ப effective-ஆ பார்த்துட்டோம், right? So read about green hydrogen, read about the National Hydrogen Mission, right? Read about certain lacunae and limitations that it has, right? So I hope this discussion was useful. Thank you.